Welcome to the enLIGHTenUP podcast. I am your host, Nicole Frolick, and I invite you to cozy up with me each week as I explore all aspects of the spiritual journey, spiritual biohacking, and expanding the mind beyond this reality. Remember that the collective awakening can start by planting one seed, so thanks for being such an amazing audience and sharing these shows with your family and friends. So without further ado, let's jump right into the episode and find out what we're discovering today. Hey everyone, welcome back to the enLIGHTenUP podcast. Today I have a new guest sharing the stage with me. Kalyn McDonald is the creator of Awakening Humanity and has worked in alternative media for the last 3 years. Her own awakening began in 2012, and what started out as a spiritual seeking turned into a paradigm-shifting journey that touched every facet of her reality. From nutrition and healthcare to government cover-ups and extraterrestrials, there are a few stones that Kalyn has yet to overturn. And her seeking began with ancient spiritualities and civilizations, and she was blessed to travel Egypt in 2016 with the great John Anthony West. She has pulled on every thread that has crossed her path to discover our true human origins. And Kalyn believes that our past, present, and future all hold keys to our own healing and the healing of the human collective. Kalyn, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. I don't know if I can live up to that bio anymore.
You sound fabulous. So, it's interesting because I've actually had some people in my audience ask me to get you on like 6 months ago, and I've been meaning to get you on and all that. And it's so interesting the way timing works out, and I think everything has aligned kind of perfectly for you and I to finally get together and do this.
Yeah, for sure. And even to add on to that, I told you when you reached out, it was just like the week prior, like you kept pinging my reality in like really weird ways. Cause I was like, cause we had never met like officially, other than interactions on social media. And so you just started pinging my reality. And then per 2020, you called like a week later. So
I know. And we've had a couple interesting synchronicities since then.
We have.
That have been wild. So this is going to be a part one of a 2-part series with you. Mm-hmm. And we're going to kind of talk about a couple PSY-OPs.
Yeah. Let's break them down.
Yeah. So we're going to get into 2, I think, very big topics, especially in the spiritual community. The first one we're going to talk about today is manifestation and the PSY-OP behind manifestation. And then we're also going to get into the twin flame PSY-OP, which is so interesting because we'll talk about that synchronicity in our next show. But everyone, just so you know, that one's up and coming. But let's get into manifestation. What were your first interactions and experiences with the law of attraction, manifestation, and what are your thoughts on that whole movie, The Secret?
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. So it's so funny. This is not the first time I've said this recently. But I have a very typical awakening story. Which I mean, I don't know that any awakening story is typical. It's anything but typical. However, as awakening stories go, my awakening started in 2012. I'm a recovering addict, and so I've been sober 8.5 years. And my sobriety date is actually 2/22/12. The universe isn't subtle with me. It was within my first six months of sobriety that my awakening really started. And there's things that led up to that. It was actually my awakening is what got me sober to begin with. So, but that's another story. So 2012, alchemy actually was my first. That was my I think in our timelines, we have almost tripwires, if we're not at a certain place by a certain time, we scheduled something in to jar us awake, to remind us, this is, you're going this way, but you should be going that way. And mine for me was alchemy. It was the word alchemy. I kept seeing it everywhere, books, movies, internet. I kept hearing it. And I was like, why am I hearing this word alchemy? And I looked it up and I Wikipedia'd alchemy, and which led me to the Kabbalion, which was my first real ancient spirituality that I was drawn to. And so, but from there, like, then I went into, Doreen Virtue angel cards and Deepak Chopra and like all the, kind of that first echelon, that first, like the first garrison that actually like calls people into the awakening stuff. Right. And so that's where I was introduced to manifestation as it pertains to, really now I know it's as it pertains to the PSY-OP that was infiltrated into like the new age spiritual ascension communities. But I didn't know that then. I just knew that, manifestation was about manifesting desires, and meditation was involved, and it was a lot of like positive affirmations and picturing. And I remember hearing like, one thing that always stuck with me is that the universe doesn't understand negatives. So you can't say, did you hear this too? So you can't say like, I don't want this, because all the universe will hear is I want this, because the universe doesn't understand negatives. And so like, I was always like watching my vocabulary, like making sure I said it right. And really, truly getting little to no results. I was like, okay, so I'm just not a manifester, right? Like there's, I knew people that were like, oh, I made vision boards, and like the whole thing. And by the way, I will still plug a vision board all day long. Like I love them. I think that gets like creative juices going. I think it causes you to, put some action behind it, so you participate, in that with the universe. Like you're not just sitting around imagining beings of light saying I want the new car. Like you have to participate in the creativity. So I'm not totally opposed to vision boards. I really like the creative flow behind that. But it just like wasn't my thing. Like I couldn't just like close my eyes and bam, I got the job, or bam, I got the house, or bam, I got this or that, whatever. And it also, a part of it like just wasn't, it never fully integrated into my being. Like now I know, because I understand the way energy works for me. I know when I integrate something, like I know when I'm on my truth, because it's like it becomes a part of the energetic bodies that I can feel, for lack of a better term. Human words for energy things are so insufficient. So I can feel that integration. This never integrated. It just was more heady. It was more something in my head. It was more something I was told to do, something, you know what I mean? Versus like something I resonated towards, type of a thing. And that was just kind of, and then eventually, I'm a certified life coach. And so I went to, it's called the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, SWIHA, in Tempe, Arizona. And there's actually classes there when they teach you like holistic marketing, or like holistic business as a business owner. That's a big part of the curriculum, is about manifesting your abundance, charging what you're worth, seeing your fortune, like all these things. And at that point, again, I was like, something doesn't feel right. Like I was like, okay, I get it. And I understood the concepts, and it was like, okay, I understand the words you're saying, but like, it wasn't integrating into me. Like I just didn't, but I didn't have any other information. So I didn't have any other, I couldn't put my finger on what didn't feel right about it. And then, I went about life. And again, cause I wasn't like really good at it. Like I just didn't focus on it a lot. And, I probably went a few years without manifesting really being like a huge part of my story. And then I met, which we'll get into in part 2, I met my twin. I'm not a fan of the word twin flame, because that's another PSY-OP. So, but I just call him my twin. Cosmic DNA match, like whatever with you, like whatever you want to call it. But it's, to me, it's, he just is him to me. So, but my twin, and he is a holistic practitioner, and he was kind of holding that information for us. And so when him and I came together, he really taught me the psychological operation that was a part of, that had actually infiltrated the holistic communities, and thinking that we can charge $100 and $150, or $200 for for our services. You know, and the imbalance to that is like, you know, there's people with 8-year degrees that don't charge that an hour. So it kind of didn't make sense to me. But then really what it was about was, you know, the higher you charge, the less people you can serve. You know, the more you charge, the more you manifest your abundance, the more you're actually eliminating entire demographics of people that you can be of service to. Because, you know what I mean? Everybody's in a different income bracket, right? And it's a balance. Like, you have to be able to support yourself and like that and all those things. But he just gave me kind of the fundamentals that I was missing. And so I ended up, you know, I took my prices way down for coaching, and, you know, and really, like, for it actually opens it up. You actually create more, like, because more people can seek you out, more people can see you. So from there, you know, that was kind of my first big shift in manifesting. That was my first big thing that I was like, okay, that's what didn't feel right to me, was focusing on my own abundance, like focusing on my own, just focusing on me, you know, and what I wanted. And then the next big shift for me was when Edge of Wonder did that expose on The Secret and the law of attraction, and actually connecting it to H.P. Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society, which I had actually read up a lot on too. And I was like bummed when I figured out she was like Luciferian. I was like, oh, like, I really liked her. Because like the line is so thin between the dark and the light. Like, we all use the same, the mechanisms are the same. It's the intention behind it that really changes it from light to dark, you know? So I resonated with a lot of the stuff I read, you know, like Isis Unveiled and all of those things. Because again, like, sacred sciences don't change per, you know, your intention. The science, the magic behind the universe is the same. And that's what resonated with me with a lot of the Theosophical Society, I think is what it was. But then Edge of Wonder does that expose and totally blows it out of the water. And I was like, well, all right, like, I'll get rid of that book. But that was my next big piece of information on manifestation, was finally realizing why it never integrated, why it didn't resonate, like why it wasn't that. It was because it wasn't on truth, you know, because as long as we're only focusing on first of all, it promotes materialism, which is, I mean, Luciferian, you know, 101. But also it's service to self, you know, because there's just, it's not releasing the highest good to whatever deity you believe in, whatever creator, whatever, you know, you're not releasing it to a power of the universe. It's control, it's materialistic, it's, you know, service to self. Like, it's all these things that we don't, when we understand it to be that way, none of us consciously like think that way or feel that way or behave that way. But that's why it's called PSY-OP. Like, that's why it's a PSYOP, because they presented it one way. They put a bunch of figures of light and, you know, self-love and all these things that we're supposed to, you know, we are supposed to love ourselves. Like, we are supposed to realize how powerful we are. We are supposed to be co-creators of our experience here and our reality. But again, it's so all of that, that's why it works, because all of that resonates. That is the sacred science. That is truth across the board, but it's the intention behind it. And it's the, you know, it's the motive. I always say check your motives. You know what I mean? It's the motive behind it. You know, are you doing this in service to yourself? Are you doing this in service to others? Are you doing this in service to the creator? Are you doing this in service to the highest good of all? And really, that's like the question we all have to ask ourselves. And that's the intention we have to step in and own up to, you know, because I can tell you, I wasn't, you know what I mean? Nobody taught me that. Like, I thought I was supposed to put a car on a vision board and hopefully get, you know, close my eyes and meditate and I'd get my car. Like, that's what they taught me, but it wasn't true. So that wasn't really a nutshell, but that's kind of my overarching story of manifestation, I would say.
And here's the interesting thing, and this is going to be so cool, because I totally resonate with a lot that you're saying, and then there's things that I actually not that I disagree, but have a different spin on it. And this is going to be so much fun, because you and I are like so on board with opening up this discussion. because I
Yeah.
think it's really important to be had. And it's interesting when you were talking about, well, first of all, like going back to the beginning of like the Doreen Virtue cards and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So I guess I've been kind of going through my own awakening since I was a teenager, since I was about 17 or so. And then I've had like little bursts along the way, but the
Right.
big one really started probably in 2012, like you. And then I had another big burst in 2016. But in 2012, my Doreen Virtue was Gabrielle Bernstein.
Okay. Yeah.
And at first I was in a really low place in my life. I was depressed, and I don't think I'd ever been depressed. And I don't even think I realized I was depressed until I finally got myself out of it. But reading her book, I think it was Spirit Junkie or something like that, was the thing that kind of helped. And so I don't want to knock it, because depending on where you are, there's certain languages that are going to resonate with you in that certain moment, and it speaks to you, and some other ones can go right over your head. And, so there's that.
It has to meet you where you are. And that's why I say like these echelons are so important, right? But it's also okay to let them go and elevate up. You know what I mean? Like the goal is to go up the spiral, right? So, you know what I mean? Like, so it's okay to honor them for where you are and what it was at that time. And then it's okay to let them go and, go up to the next loop in the spiral.
Yeah, totally. And so it's interesting because, like you, I find myself less wanting to gravitate towards the commercialized spirituality and kind of go more with the more of like the less polished,
The raw, dirty stuff. Yeah.
The raw, dirtier stuff. Definitely.
Yep.
The one that doesn't try to keep it into a box.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been good with boxes. I've always hated
labels. We're not
Yeah.
made for that.
These labels and all of that. Interesting though, how you talked about like the pricing and all of that. I think that's really interesting that you brought that up, because that's something I think a lot of us go through and kind of go back and forth. And I was of similar mindsets. And with me, I started off as a massage therapist, and I had my own business when I lived in the Cayman Islands for 9 years. I was there, and I was charging like $125 for a massage down there, and it was pretty standard, like going rate. And so when I got here, and I started charging my coaching, part of like, it's interesting. Like, I totally agree that there are people out there who can't afford, but need the help. And like you, I really want to be of service in whatever capacity I can. But I've also found a parallel, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it, that I was also doing a lot of work pro bono. And so I had my rates, but I'd also do work for free with people who really couldn't afford it. And I found that those people, not all of them, I don't want to like lump everyone into one category,
right.
But a repetitive pattern that I started to see was that there were people who wouldn't respect the work I was giving, or wouldn't show up in the way they needed to, because they weren't investing with money into themselves. And so I realized, because this was a lesson that I had to go through when it was 2014, I was kind of like, even though I was making decent money, I was living paycheck to paycheck because my bills were so high.
Right.
And it just seemed like no matter how much more money I made, it always seemed like I had more bills, like it was really and finally I'm just like, I can't live like this anymore. I don't want to live like this anymore. Something has to shift. There's a reason why I keep playing out these patterns. And I had to pay $150 for this 15-minute channeling session with this group. And the information that they gave me by far changed my whole entire life. Like, it changed everything for me, shifted everything within 5 weeks, all that. But one of the reasons why they charge that much is because money is a really big trigger in our own self-worth. So in this 3D reality, money, it's just paper. We put a value on it. We can say it's good. We can say it's bad. We can put whatever intention around it we want. That's totally up to us. It has no energy other than it's just a piece of paper. But that there's a lesson here for us to learn our value through money. It's a trigger for us. And to know, like, what is our worth and what are we willing to invest in ourselves? And oftentimes we'll spend money on other things that we think we're supposed to spend money on. But when it comes to spending money on ourselves, we don't. And I realized I was actually robbing people of that lesson by offering for free. So what I did instead was I still kept my sessions as what they are at the price, but I started like a group coaching subscription program that's really affordable. You know, it's like $11 a month for people to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so you can help other people in that way. So I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on that when it comes to
very similar to yours. I am a huge proponent of, I don't believe in getting things for free. I don't, because money does have a value, and it's an energetic exchange. That's what it is. You know what I mean? Like it actually, to me, of my understanding, it is more than paper. But the thing is it could be cauliflower. It doesn't matter what that exchange is, but that money is what we have put the value for an energetic exchange. And you absolutely, especially, oh my goodness, when you're talking about health, someone's health, it is energetically imperative for them to participate in their own health. And so this is a sacred science. Like this is bigger than, you know, if you follow the law of one, or a lot of, you know, of the more ancient modalities, the healer is just, you're pretty much just a container to let intelligent infinity flow through you to that person, which means if you're not actually doing anything and they're not participating, intelligent infinity just is kind of like, woo, flying all over the room. You know what I mean? Like, where's it going to go? Where's it directed to? So it's actually like imperative for them to participate. And really, I because I have run the gamut, like I have charged prices that made me uncomfortable, and then I have, you know, and I had to go through my own journey to find the prices that made sense for me. And I also had a really great teacher in my twin, because he had an established acupuncture business, you know what I mean? And so I got to reap the benefits of his journey with that as well. So I don't judge, where everybody's got to find what's comfortable for them. You know, if I were to coach somebody around it, it would be more along the lines of finding that middle ground for the practitioner. You know, because it's kind of a like an old what's the word? Say portfolio. That's not right. Like pattern, like a sewing pattern, right? Like to do the, like, okay, I'll charge my prices here, and then I'll do pro bono here. Like lawyers do it, doctors do it. You know what I mean? Like it's a template. That's what I'm looking for. Like it's a template in society, right? Is that, okay, like I want to feel like I'm giving back, so I'll do pro bono work and da 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 da. But again, you know, there are more people in the world to help than the people that can afford those prices and the people that can't afford anything. There's an entire humanity in the middle, you know, so kind of finding that middle ground. And it really has to come down to, you know, to what you're comfortable with. You know, as far as, you know, that I don't want to, you were supposed to be in that moment to get that information. You could have spent $1.50, or you could have spent $150,000. You still would have gotten the information that you needed for that shift in your life when you went to that 15-minute reading. You know what I mean? Like you paid $150. You could have taken or added as many zeros. Like the information would have been the same. You were supposed to be there. And I'm sure the universe gave you what you needed to pay that price at that time. You know, but as far as like having kind of that concept, I guess I'm just a little jaded. I've seen holistic businesses say things like that. Mm-hmm. You know, here's why we charge this, and it's for your benefit. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, okay, like, thanks. You know what I mean? Like I totally
get where
you know what I mean? From. So like,
no,
well, whatever. Like I don't know that business, and I'm not here to judge it, but I've heard in the infiltration of holistic healthcare that I have seen that PSY-OP, and I've seen it I've seen it like tentacles through and come out and manifest in a lot of ways. And that's one of them. That's just an example of one of them. You know, people, there's like the love offering and you know what I mean? Like there's just a lot of different ways that people are trying to circumvent the money issue, when really it just needs to be like addressed head on in each person, and everyone just needs to stand in their truth about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you know, it's like you said, we all have our own journeys with our own self-worth and how it comes across in whatever capacity it is. And I agree with you. I've seen the, I don't want to call it the false light or whatever, but let's just
that's
say
probably what it is.
not the purest intentions behind these spiritual businesses and all of that. And I've seen it. And in some ways it's perfect because it helps teach us discernment, right? Like they're lessons of teachers of discernment for us in what's right or not. And because we don't understand these boundaries, no one's taught us how to understand all of this. You know, we're just supposed to go through this because we're supposed to be dependent on the system, right? We're supposed to not think for ourselves.
It's not even that nobody taught us. It's that we're actually being brainwashed the wrong way. So we have we're literally walking uphill both ways in the snow with no shoes on. You know what I mean? Just trying to get, you know, where we're supposed to be. Because we actually have to undo everything we've been taught to even take our first step on a truly enlightened path. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like we don't even get to just like pop out in earth and get to like start walking our enlightened path. It's like we are literally inundated from our first moments on earth. You know what I mean? Like literally from fluorescent lights in a hospital to, you know, our first vaccines and our first 24 hours of being alive. Like we are literally from the first moments on earth, we are battling the matrix.
Yeah.
So we like, it takes a lot to even see the really enlightened path, the truly enlightened path, not the, how do I get around all the psychological operations, you know, first.
It's interesting because when I first started out with this kind of whole manifestation thing, it's where I started really practicing it was, it was so interesting the way it all happened for me. This must have been in 2000 and I want to say 2003, 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. I was having really big issues with my current boyfriend at the time. And I was like, 25, 26, something like that. And things weren't going well in the relationship.
Right.
And
as they tend not to do at that age.
Yeah. And I just, you know, he was being a real jerk. But when I look back, I can say, well, I was just starting to get really dependent on him, like really kind of needy, because he was pulling away, which was making me want to like go, why are you doing this? And so anyways, he kind of went on a trip and I just went into a bookstore. And how I choose my books are I just kind of go into an aisle and I'm like, it's here. It's going to speak to me. I'm going to see it. And this book shows up and it was, "Excuse me, your life is waiting." And I'm like, okay. And I just like, oh, this is the book. This is the one I'm supposed to read, you know? And so I go and I buy it and I bring it home. And it was just really getting me into a more positive vibration. It was very basic. It was 4th grade, like vibration, positivity, like that kind of stuff. But it was so interesting that I was like, okay, the guy that I was dating, we had talked about wanting to get a house together. I had moved back in with my parents so we could save money. And so I was trying to save money so that we could buy a house together, because we talked about having a family and all that kind of stuff. Like that's where this relationship was supposed to be going. Right. And I was like, you know what? I just know I want my own place right now. And I don't know if it's going to be with him. So I'm just going to focus. And I did all these things. I started focusing on like what my condo would look like, the kind I would buy like magazines, like, you know, like House and Home. And I would just kind of read them and just like get my energy, would get excited. And I just, you know, I do it before I go to bed and then go to sleep. And like within 6 weeks, I found out he was cheating on me.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
thought like my whole life was falling apart. I went through like I went to a very, very dark place. And, but within 2 or 3 months of me finding this out, I literally somehow was managed to save up enough money. Like something just happened where I was able to save up enough money and put a down payment on my first condo, on my first, and he still hadn't had any money to buy his own place. And it's weird. It's like I contributed it to this new opening and stuff, but it worked then, but it didn't continue to work. And
Yeah.
it's like, as I evolved in my own spiritual journey and awareness of things that we're talking about right now, it seemed like it became more work and it wasn't effortless. And I feel like it should be effortless. Like, for instance, just had Valentina Reese on the show, and we were talking about how the best way and the most effortless way to jump timelines is to clear your DNA of all your wounds and your healing and all of that. And I feel like that's tied into the manifestation laws. What are your thoughts on that?
So I can tell you, like I said, I am not, I was never like an expert manifester. So my experience with good things coming to me, or positive changes, or and I say I'm being very particular about my words because very few of these were material things. I have I have trauma in my background. I have repressed trauma, and so I have a lot of disorders rattling around in this head. A lot, from addiction to I've struggled with eating disorders. I've struggled with self-harm. I've struggled with I have borderline personality disorder. I have, like when I read The Law of One and they were explaining how wanderers have personality disorders, I was like, oh, that's why I'm crazy. I was like, gosh, like it felt nice to have a little validation there. But and I've been through healing journey after healing journey after healing journey. I have been in very, very dark wells of my shadow. I have walked very, very dark hallways of my shadow. I have almost not lived through my shadow quite a few times to be, really, I mean, let's just put it all on the table because there's no more time anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's authenticity or bust at this point. So, as as I would get through one layer of my shadow and get to kind of plateau. So like the first real big layer was addiction, right? And I was 30 days inpatient, 60 days halfway house, 90 days 3/4 house. So my first 6 months of sobriety, I was actually in some type of facility, and so like through those first 6 months, really, like, it was the first time I got completely honest with my own soul. And because I had ridden it I had already had suicide attempts. I had already been to jail. I had already been institutionalized. Like literally my last option was death. So it was like, let's just try sobriety. What the hey, And of course this happens on 2/22/12, right? And so, but going through, as I healed that massive layer of my shadow, it was in the next year or two after that I can look back and say that's when manifestation happened for me. But it was not because I was sitting Indian style in front of my vision board with my candles lit and my Doreen Virtue angel cards in front of me. And you know what I mean? Like, in all honesty, believe me, I had her books. It wasn't because of that. It was because as I was shedding the toxicity of my wounds, as I was shedding that frequency of that particular layer of my shadow, it was just scientific. Like there was no other place for me to go but to go up, where up I was connecting with these better aspects of life, like having an apartment, having friends, family that wanted to talk to me. You know what I mean? So that's when, and when I was in the work, every time I've actually been in the work is when, here's why, me and the universe, we have so many things that we're going to have a very long talk about after this incarnation. And here's one of them. So I get exactly what I need to the penny. So the word abundance, I'm like, it's a cute word. I'm more like, here's rent to the dime, and you don't get a penny more. And now it's come in the most magical, mystical, amazing ways. Don't get me wrong. Like, I literally have never wanted for a dime since I got sober. But that looks like being like scraping by every month, every time, like getting, okay, even COVID, right? Like, so COVID happens. So I have a few things. I got hit in December with some van repairs. So just so your audience knows, I live in a van. I own a home. I'm not homeless. I have renters in there, but I'm doing the van life thing for a few years. And so I got hit with van repairs in December, right before Christmas. I got hit with house repairs for my tenants in January and February. Then it was back to van repairs, more van repairs. And so leading up to March, right? And I just could not get out from underneath, just getting hit with repair bill after repair bill. And I had gotten to a place where I was coming up on an introductory period on a credit card coming up. And so I would have to like pay interest, and I hadn't had to pay interest yet. And the plan had always been for a year to just pay it off before that happened, but I couldn't catch my breath. Like, I couldn't get there. And so I see that month coming up, and I'm like, well, you know what I mean? Like, I have a very big chip on my shoulder with the central banking system. So I don't pay interest because I don't give them my money, right? Like, it's a thing. So, so I come up, literally, I'm up to the month where I'm like, well, it's it. I've got like a few weeks to pay it off, or I'm going to get hit with an interest payment for the first time in a long time. And then COVID happened, and I got a stimulus check, and I literally, like, the check came in and the check went to the credit card, and literally, like, within days of like the deadline, you know? And so it's just things like that. Like, and literally, like, the stimulus check was $1,200, and I think credit card was like 11 something. So again, you know what I mean? Like, I get right up to what I need, but it's always been that way because I am like consistently, whether I want to be or not, in my shadow working. And so for me, my experience in this life and my experience to share around manifestation is that manifestation is a result of the inner work. It is a result of matching a frequency. You cannot think your way to a frequency.
Yeah.
Trust me, I have tried. I don't know this because I'm like, I sit, you know, Indian style with like a book in my lap, and I'm like, just all wisdom. No, I've tried. I failed. Like, I know this because it never worked for me. You can't think your way to a healed state. You can't think your way to a certain frequency. You cannot just stare at the light and not look at the shadows behind you on the wall. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't. It's a result. So like, manifestation is a result of healing.
Yeah,
ultimately.
And I think, you know, so some people would then say, you know, well, what about all these people who have like massive homes and like endless supply of money, but they're totally shallow and in their ego and not even concerned with like the real depth of the work? And, you know, my answer to that is, well, maybe that was part of their soul contract, is that they wanted to experience all of that and see if they were ever going to get themselves out of it. Like, were they ever going to come to a deeper level of their soul with all of those distractions to keep you away from it? Because in reality, the money and the material things, there's nothing really wrong with them, but they can distract us from our inner work when we're comfortable, because it makes us comfortable. And so when we're in our comfort zone, we're not growing. We're not looking to do anything different, right? We're like, well, things are good. I'm just going to keep riding this wave. And that's not really how it works. And so it's interesting how all of that plays out. I really believe that, you know, that manifestation, like true manifestation from the purest part of your soul, from like the heart chakra that is cleared and cleared of all the judgment and cleared of all of the anger and all of that, and starts to reside in that unconditional like frequency, that stuff just starts happening because you've done so much healing within yourself. You've invested. It doesn't have to always come in the form of money. That's just one form, right? But if you invest your time, if you invest your energy into yourself, that will start to pay dividends in many different ways. And I think, we've been taught to underestimate the value of the shadow work and going inward to do our own healing.
Oh, of course. Well, it's not that we've been taught to undervalue it. We haven't been taught the science of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? On purpose, because that's how you keep an entire planet oppressed, is you keep them sick and wounded and feeling like they're the only ones that feel this way. And, and then you add, a weaponized food system, and, all the psychological trauma, and then the physical trauma, and like, that's literally how you do it. Like the PSYOPs are the slave masters.
Yeah.
And just to play a little devil's advocate. So, as far as, people with money, and again, this is after like years of processing a lot. Like if you had asked me this a year ago, if you had asked me this 8 years ago, it probably would have been a different answer. It would have been a different answer. So we also have been taught that money brings ease. It may ease some things, but it brings problems that people without money don't know either. You know what I mean? And so
absolutely.
And so really, like, it's more of I think the PSYOP around money as well is also, everybody thinks it just creates like it fosters an environment of judgment for something that what you have or don't have, right? You know what I mean? And so and really, like, everybody comes here with a shopping list of soul work and frequencies to find and match and heal, and karma to eradicate, karma to collect, karma, you know what I mean? Like, everybody comes here with their own thing, and there's certain things like, we have the shopping list, and then we have to pick out the vehicle, and then we have to like pick out the container, because we construct this reality so that we can achieve our list of goals that we have. And just because that construct looks like, a millionaire with mansions doesn't mean that we're not authentically doing our own soul work either. And there's poor people that aren't doing their soul work either. You know what I mean? So,
absolutely.
like, yeah. And so money, it makes some things easier. And if you don't have it, you see those things clearer, because
Yep. I'm really glad you said that, because that's a really good clarification, because I completely agree with you. It's, at the end of the day, we've all come here with our own soul paths, our own journeys, and our own experiences to live out for whatever reasons. Only our soul knows, and that was intended to be so. And you're right. There are other experiences that can make all that money seem like nothing when the experience is had by that person, regardless of how much money they have. Like, like, for instance, you may hear the person who's got a lot of money, they have a happy family, everything's good, and then someone gets like terminal cancer, and there's not one thing your dollar can do to save that,
Yep.
and so there's infinite possibilities of that. I'm curious if you wanted to like quickly chat about this, the other part about, I think that is part of the PSY-OP of manifestation, is that whole, what you were talking about earlier, of how, spiritual community is just focused on the light and not the dark, and it's like, I just want to have rainbow. I don't want the negativity, just keep it positive.
Do we have another hour? Okay. Let's dive into this one, because this one I've got, like, this is like my soapbox one. Like, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have like a specific question? Did you want to steer it a certain way?
No, I think you can go and run with it.
Yeah. So one of the, like, a beautiful way to explain this. So I was actually, I don't know what, labels are very weird to me now. I don't know what is a was and what was an is, or I'm not sure. But I was a part of the LGBT community from 21 until I met my twin, or until my twin and I remembered who we were. And so I was married. I was married to a woman, and I was divorced by a woman. And, so I've had all these experiences. And now I'm just kind of to the point where I don't I don't really think about it. You know what I mean? So I don't know what other people need to call me. I now say, like, I've been a part of the LGBT community for almost 20 years, 15, 20 years, you know. So one of the most beautiful stories that I have to really discuss, like, the different, like, the light and the dark tools, like assets when you're healing, is when I was going through my divorce. So my twin, like I said, he's an acupuncturist. He was actually my acupuncturist for about 5 years. And when we had, like, this amnesia that once I had gotten through certain echelons of healing through my shadow, that I remembered who we were. And we just call it the amnesia because that's literally what it was like. Like, one day it was like all of a sudden I just remembered all this stuff that I was like, what is happening right now? Because I'd known him for so long, you know, and he always knew me as a gay woman, and I always knew him as my acupuncturist. So we actually started working together. I started life coaching at the clinic too. I stopped being his patient, and then I started life coaching. So then we became colleagues. That was like part of our journey. But when my wife divorced me, so I've had two soulmates. I had one soulmate before her that kind of came in really, like, quick and dirty, kind of like broke me enough for my wife to, like, come into my reality. And then my wife was another soulmate, and we had, like, this, like, fairy tale. It really was like a fairy tale looking relationship until she just left me after our first fight a year later. And because she was my wrecking ball, like, she was the one that was supposed to come in and, like, finish the job the first break did, you know, so that way I could really put myself back together the right way. And that's where a lot of trauma came out. That's where borderline personality disorder came out. Like, all these things that had been keeping me in pain and keeping me sick that I couldn't access. That experience is what drew that out of me. And the story that's behind that is, so I went to my acupuncturist, and I said, look, I've been through addiction. I've been through, like, my family abandoned me in sobriety. Like, I've got a mother wound. Like, I've been through all this stuff, and now my wife left me. Like, this was supposed to be my happy ending. So whatever's left inside of me, I have to find now. Like, I have to get it all out. I'm not going to live through this. And he said that there's a Chinese medicine treatment, and he basically called it the well. And he said that basically what it does is it will drop me down into my root chakra, so that I can go down into my root wounds. And while I'm down there, I can rearrange what's in the wrong place. I can get rid of what's not supposed to be there. I can, put things back the way they're supposed to be. I can look at, like, I had to be down in it. Like, I had to be down there. And I tend to live in my upper chakras. So I see everything from a bird's eye view, right? And I see big picture things. I can see why people are hurting me. I can see their pain. And so I excuse a lot of it, right? And I don't ever come down into my body and into this dimension and process it where it's supposed to be processed, because I'm always kind of up here seeing it from, like, the crown chakra view. And he told me, he said, I'm very hesitant to do this protocol on you. He said, because you will not be able to see the light. He said, and you live up here. And he said, so that is, it's going to take you to a place that you've never been before. And you're not, he goes, and I just want you to know, like, you need to have certain kind of protocols in place and people around you and da-da-da-da. He goes, because you'll forget the light is there. And I was like, I'm at, like, a breaking point. Like, we either have to do this or I'm not going to survive, this experience. And so we did it, and he, we did the session, and he did it. And within about a month and a half, I was hospitalized for borderline personality disorder. But that's where that's when I got my correct diagnosis. That's when I got my correct treatment. That's when I could start my healing journey there. Cognitive behavioral, that's CBT, DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, very, like, rooted in a lot of Buddhist philosophy, meditation, affirmations, validation. Like, DBT is one of those things we should all learn in second grade. You know what I mean? And we'd all be like, well, we'd be a well-balanced society, you know, a human race. But and then like when I was probably about a month into the healing of that, that's when I realized I couldn't see the light anymore. Like that's when I literally, I was sitting in my living room and it dawned on me, I was kind of like flatlined, like I was doing all the work and I was dealing with the pain and I was going through all this stuff, but I realized like I couldn't see the light. Like I don't know how to explain it, but that was literally my thought. And so I made an appointment and I went in and I was like, I need to come back up. And he said, okay. And so then we did a protocol and we went up to my sacral chakra, and, you know, then there was more journey there. But the point of that is that the only way to truly heal is to go into the darkness, because the years leading up to that, those were the Doreen Virtue years. Those were the secret years. Those were the PSY-OP years. You know what I mean? Where it was like, okay, like work with this healer or that healer and this figure of light and this golden cord and this silver thread and this da, 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 you know what I mean? Like all those things. But really what I truly needed to do to fundamentally heal, not heal in my head, but to fundamentally heal from the chakra, like from the root chakra, from the chakra system, which is where everything manifests anyways, I had to go into the darkness and I had to sit there. And I had to sit there until it put me in the hospital, you know? But from there, that's when real change happened. And so I am, and with all the other disorders that I've gotten to play with too, you know, I am a huge advocate of talk therapy and, you know, cognitive behavioral therapies and just different things that you know, you have to face it. You have to sit in it. You have to feel the pain. You have to be uncomfortable. You know, you can meditate all you want. Like, I think everything works holographically. So you need the therapy, you need the meditation, you need the crystals, you need the, you know, because I used all of those things, but I had to do it all. Like I couldn't just put all my eggs in one basket and expect fundamental healing to happen. And really at the end of the day, it's whatever gets you into your darkness, so that you can walk through it to come out. And again, what more evil, genius, brilliant way to keep a planet oppressed without having to stand over them with a whip yourself than to traumatize them from birth. Never explain the science of the mind to them, never explain sacred sciences to them, and make them think that nobody else feels that way. You know what I mean? Like, boom, now everybody is sitting in the corner crying all day long and putting on a happy face at work. You know what I mean? And yeah, so it's brilliant. It's evil, but it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's so important to go into the darkness and the healing. I mean, that's why we're here. I mean, if we wanted to stay up in whatever dimension it was, you know, like there are certain things that you learn through going into this kind of dual reality that we're living in. And to be afraid of it, sure, I get it. It's scary. Like when you go into those,
painful.
Yeah, it's very painful, but that's why we came here. Is like the only way to move through it is literally through it. You don't get to jump over hurdles or like, you know, around it. And I think that's one of the things, because what we don't realize is of course, like the subconscious runs everything. And so if you don't go in there and start healing all the programs and getting to the roots and really kind of unpacking it all and rewiring yourself and doing all of that necessary work, then, you know, sure, some of the manifestation techniques may work. That I know they did for me in certain ways, but at some point you're going to hit walls where you're like, well, this isn't working anymore. And it's because you have to go into that darkness and you have to start getting to the roots. Like, you know, it's interesting talking about needing to come down into the root, because it is like our fight or flight. It's where we're either surviving or thriving. And there's so much damage that gets inflicted on us as a society through the root and the sacral chakra to keep us out of, you know, our power of abundance, nature, and able to thrive, instead of being just surviving all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important, just to really kind of go in there. And I can see how part of the spiritual community has been kind of co-opted to deny that, you know, just focus on the positive.
Yeah, because again, it's literally like how they oppress us without having to oppress us. It's like the conspiracy theory psyop, right? Like they don't have to do the work anymore, because society will do the work, because
Yeah.
we will say, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. Like, oh, it's pointless. So now they don't even have to like hide their own tracks, right? Like, we do it for us. And it's the same, the psychological operations are no different. You know what I mean? They just, if you just don't teach us like, I always, when I'm working with people and explaining, having conversations about trauma and so forth, I always use the the pancreas example. So you can't fix the diseased organ with the diseased organ, right? So if your pancreas doesn't produce insulin, you need external help. Like, you need outside help. You either need insulin, or you need whatever the holistic protocol you want to find, doesn't matter. But you can't just like will your pancreas to, maybe you can on some dimension, but let's just all be honest and say we're not quite there here. But you can't like will your pancreas to start using insulin. You need an outside force to help it operate properly. And our brains are no different, and we are so removed from the science of our minds. We are so removed from the sacred science, like the energetic sciences of our minds and emotions, and chakras and so forth. Like, that I always tell people, like, it's just science that we need. It's like with addiction. So the program of addiction, which is the medical model for treatment, is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it works across all addiction programs. But you have to be taken through it by another addict, and that's because we need the other self to heal. We need the other self, because if in a mental disorder, how do you know that what has always been reality to you is not actually real? How do you grasp that? How do you understand that? You don't. You need somebody that actually reaches their hand into that illusion, you know what I mean, and actually pulls you through your own shadow and walks you out of your own darkness. Like, you need that guide. And it's really, it's just as simple as the learn, teach, learn, self to other self from the law of one. You need that reflection. You need the other self to learn yourself, because we can't do this on an island. Even the creator needed us to know itself, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's like the fundamental blueprint of the universe.
Yeah.
And so psychology and disorders and mental health is no different. But especially in Western culture, we are taught that we are supposed to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. We're not supposed to feel uncomfortable or feel bad. Everything is about feeling good. Everything. It's that Luciferian agenda running through our entire society, from your materialism to your relationships to your job to everything. You're supposed to feel good all the time. Bullshit. But so we're told we're not supposed to feel bad. We're not explained the science of the mind. We're not explained the science, like sacred sciences of just existence. And we're told, and we're made to believe that nobody else feels this way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's brilliant. Again, it's just brilliant, because that's what keeps us sick. We never reach out for help. We never tell other people that we feel bad. We constantly, it comes out sideways in medical issues, mental disorders, addictions, just sideways behaviors, deviant behaviors. Like, it's all coming out because energy, energy is going to find its water, right? Like, it's flows. So it's going to find its way out eventually. You know what I mean? You can dam it up one place, and then it'll make a track somewhere else. And that's where it comes out sideways, because it's not flowing, as intended. So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, this soapbox for me is just the plug to everybody to understand it's okay to not feel good. It's okay to feel pain. It's okay to feel bad. And seek out the other self, seek out somebody, whether it's QHHT or it's CBT or it's a life coach or it's, somebody like, really, like, even if we're meant to be in relationships of some magnitude, it's like we have to come down off the mountain. Like, we can't be the hermit at the top of the mountain, because that's not enlightenment. Enlightenment is a practice. Like, you have to be able to apply that, like, with the rest of the world, so just not being afraid to like reach out and find that other self. I would suggest it being a professional one if you have traumas, but you know what I mean? And being able to really use that relationship as a lighthouse, through your shadow work. And also, that was the other thing that you had said, that I wanted to point out. You had said, you were talking about, if we came here to experience this, like if we wanted to stay in the sixth density, we would have stayed there, but we actually came here to experience this. So one of my biggest lessons or overcomes that, like something that I overcame was because, so with borderline personality disorder, it comes from trauma. It's like the brain's, it's one of the ways that a brain will like rewire itself to survive trauma. But then it like affects, the whole rest of your life, which is fabulous. But basically what it is it's a disorder of unregulated emotions. So most people have like a 1 to 10 range of emotions, and borderlines have like a 1 to 20. So like your bad day and my bad day, like if my boss tells me, oh, you did something wrong, generally most people will be kind of down about it or be kind of pissy or have a bad day, but be able to shake it off and like, lessons learned, da 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 da. I will like quit my job and go look for another one and like end up homeless, and you know what I mean? Like it's also, everything's just like bigger,
for hyper polarized.
Yeah. I mean, your 7 is like my 17, you know what I mean? Like for borderline. So, and you generally, a lot of empaths are borderline because, trauma to us hurts more, or not more, like it's not a contest, but it's just,
well, you feel more when you're an
painful.
empath, you're just feeling more. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of my first years of my spirituality and my awakening and my seeking was all with the intention of escaping. Everything from wanting to learn how to remote view, wanting to learn how to, I always picture people flying through space. What's that called?
Astro travel.
Yes, that one.
Travel.
Yeah. Doing that, you know what I mean? And meditation and all those things. Like I went through most of my former like beginning years and I didn't know it at the time. I had to learn this about myself, but it was all with the intention of escaping, to get out of here, and I wanted all these abilities and I wanted to be able to do all these like, superhuman things because I just wanted to get out. I wanted to go home. You know what I mean? I've got 3 suicide attempts under my belt because that's a symptom of borderline. So it's really all about escaping. And I think that's another psychological operation, especially in the New Age community, is, we try to do all this work so that we can manifest, so that we can attain some type of clair ability, right? Like clairsentient or clairvoyant or clairaudient, or you know what I mean? Like, so we're trying to do all of these things, which like, and again, it always has to come back to what is our intention. Like we always have to check our motives, because I had to check mine, and mine was, I thought I was doing all of this like really enlightened spiritual seeking, but I was really just trying to get to a place where I could get out of Earth and go home. Whether I did that physically, mentally, emotionally, it didn't matter. That was my end goal. And so really after like addiction and borderline and twin stuff, and you know what I mean? Like I've come to this place where now, today, even if I was given the option, I probably wouldn't leave here. And you can notice me stuttering a little bit because I'm like, maybe. I don't know.
Is it completely anchored in? I don't know.
I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like so I don't know if your audience knows, but I worked for Corey Good for a while, and Sphere Being Alliance. I was on that team. And so in that realm of information, like there's a lot of inner work facing, a solar flash or any type of like, I know like David Wilcock, I've never subscribed to this, but David Wilcock is very big on like, spaceships taking us off planet or us like ascending into light bodies and like, et cetera, et cetera. I don't, right, wrong, or indifferent, don't know. That was just never my personal frequency, but more power to him and anybody else that thinks that. I don't know what's going to happen. So I think all options are on the table. But it was in like from 2016 to 2018, I did a lot of work where I realized that I did not come here, go through the hell that I've lived through. just to leave here, right? Like, why would I come as a wanderer just to heal and ascend and leave? Like, to me, that's not even logical. So now it's my understanding, for me personally, should a solar flash happen, should these 10 days of darkness, should anything like that, I believe that I will be one of the ones that stays here and helps, humanity get through the Armageddon, essentially.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm right
yeah.
there with you.
And I see a lot of our community and a lot of the awakened and the ascended and the spiritual and the da-da-da, they're doing everything so that they get their golden ticket on the spaceship and can leave. So again, you know what I mean? But in all
honesty, the Willy Wonka chocolate factory.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally, right? So it's kind of like, again, it's always about checking our motives. And, I didn't come by any of this information like, it's like I didn't just wake up one day and have these understandings. I made all of the mistakes, and I had all the wrong intentions, and I had all the bad motives. You know what I mean? Until literally the universe like held my head under my shadow for so long that it was eventually like, Kaylin, this, wake up. That's not why you're here. So, for whatever that means to anybody, I don't know. If somebody else might resonate with that, great. And if you don't, take what works for you and leave the rest, man. Like, because I'll change in a year. Like, I'm gonna resonate and be somewhere else in another year.
And that's what's totally cool. I've always said that we're constantly growing, we're constantly learning. Whatever you believe is because of all of the information you have at your fingertips right now. If more information comes in that can change that reality or that belief, you've got to be malleable to it, or else how do you grow? And the growth experience is about being limitless, and being limitless doesn't mean you never have limits. You get to change your mind at any given point in time, based off of whatever information you have at that time. And everyone is allowed to do that.
You get to go up the spiral, and you get to come back down the spiral. Like, and believe me, honestly, it's, I don't remember. I always call it the law of rhythm, but it's the pendulum swing. You know what I mean? Like, as far as you swung this way, sacred science says you got to swing as far back that way until, you know what I mean? And the pendulum eventually, like, the goal is balance. The goal is always 0 point. Like, the goal is always that untriggered entity that just sees every experience for the being of the experience, which is really interesting, because I really think that we are coming to, some of my colleagues and I have talked about, like, in the last year, that the polarity, like the duality. So I always say duality creates reality, right? Like, we have to have both. We have to have the dark and the light. There is no reality. There is no manifested matter without it. But right now, in the last year, we, I personally have felt this, not shift, but this, we're getting closer to 0 point. Like, we're getting closer to the center of the polarity pole. And really, I didn't think about it, so I was experiencing it, but now I understand that to be like the most intense place, because 0 point, like, the closest to the middle of of duality is where you are closest to the most extreme of both sides, right? Like, you've got everything out here, but as you get closer to the light and closer to the dark and into the middle, so eventually you've got 1 foot in both. You are literally experiencing the brightest light and the darkest night at the same time. And I don't know if anybody else can relate to this right now, but the highs and lows happening in 2020 are like,
no,
you know what I mean? Kind of next level.
I completely resonate with that. And I've said it on my channel before that the solar flash, to me, what came through my guidance was, it's not happening outside of us, it's happening within us. And the solar flash is literally when the darkness within gets so dark and the brightness within gets so bright that both are blinded, and it creates this flash of neutrality and 0 point.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe. I don't necessarily think there's going to be some light that blankets the earth. Maybe there is, I don't know, but I don't think that can actually happen if it doesn't happen within us. Everything outside of us is a reflection of what's happening in. So it has to happen within us first.
Mm.
So, but yeah, this has been great information, I think. And I really appreciate you being so honest and authentic. I think it's so important. It's like you said at the very beginning, there is no other option these days.
No.
If truth needs to be revealed, then that means all of us just have to come forward in our most authentic ways. And you know what? Sorry, not sorry.
Literally. Yeah.
And just
hashtag sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
I say it all the time.
It's time for us to all get uncomfortable, and then get comfortable after being uncomfortable. So
remember, it's okay to feel bad. It's okay to not feel good all the time.
Exactly. Exactly. So, okay, so this has been awesome. So our next talk is going to be on the twin flame PSY-OP. And it's not about, does it exist? Does it not exist? That's not what it's about. There are certain, you and I have talked about this, and we may see eye to eye on certain things. We may have different, I'm not sure yet because we haven't really got into it. But there are certain parts of the story that I think we both feel are a little bit PSY-OP-ish. And we're going to talk about that on our next part 2 coming up.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Before we leave, please let the audience know before next week comes out where they can find you, and if they want to connect with you, how do they do that?
Yes. So right now I am on Facebook and Twitter. My brand is called Awakening Humanity. The handles for both Facebook and Twitter are @AwokeHumanity. You can find my personal accounts on both Facebook and Twitter. Is Kalyn Ann 222. You should be able to find me that way. And I'll send you the links too, so that they should be below.
Yeah, everything will be in the description below, 100%. Well, thanks so much, girl, for being on the show. Can't wait for us to do the next half. And thanks again to the audience for showing up. Love you so much, and I'll be back with you again next week.
Thank you all for joining our show. We appreciate you tuning in and supporting us. If any of you have any questions you would like answered on the show, or any guests that you would like to hear on our show, please email that information to us at info@enlightenup.us, or send us a voice message using the Anchor app. There's a super cool feature on there that allows you to send us a message or ask us a question with a touch of a button right from the app. And please continue to support us by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you haven't checked out Nicole's channel on YouTube yet, head on over there for some more insight from her, or you can visit her website, inflexibleme.com, where you can book a personal coaching session or a tarot reading, watch some of her most informative videos, or you can sign up for her newsletter. And if you're interested in some light language healing, head to my YouTube channel, lisaloveslove.com, or send me an email to lisa@lisaloveslove.com to inquire about your own personal reading. Thank you again for joining us and supporting us, and we'll be back with you all next week.